In 1904, for the first time in World Series history, there was no championship. The teams were ready, the fans were ready. So, why didn't the World Series happen? Let's dive into the strange and scandalous reasons behind the 1904 World Series being canceled and the drama that followed. 1904 was a pivotal year in baseball, and it should have been one for the history books. The New York Giants, led by manager John McGraw, were dominating the National League, and the Boston Americans, soon to be the Red Sox, were coming off their historic 1903 World Series win. The stage was set for a thrilling rematch between the American League and National League champions. But for reasons that seemed outrageous at the time, and even today, the 1904 World Series never happened. It all came down to one person, John McGraw, the fiery manager of the New York Giants. McGraw refused to play in the World Series. Why? He believed that the American League wasn't a legitimate league. He thought the American League was inferior to the established National League and felt that the Giants, as the superior team, shouldn't have to face them. At the heart of McGraw's stubbornness was his belief that the American League was filled with second-rate players who had jumped from the National League for better pay. The National League had won the battle for dominance in baseball for years, but the American League was growing fast, and McGraw wanted to make sure it stayed in its place. This wasn't just a simple, we don't want to play situation. McGraw had to deal with league pressure and backlash from his own players who were eager to take part in the series. But McGraw stuck to his guns, and despite the demand for a rematch between the top teams, he refused. The Giants didn't show up, and so there was no World Series in 1904. Fans were furious. They had been looking forward to a potential showdown between two of the most dominant teams in baseball. The press had a field day, with some calling McGraw's decision arrogant and childish. It didn't help that McGraw's Giants were known for their strong, sometimes controversial personalities. The refusal to play only added to their reputation as being difficult and uncooperative. Even though the Giants didn't play in the World Series, the 1904 season was one for the ages. McGraw's team finished with a 106-47 record, an impressive feat by any standard. The Giants were led by future Hall of Famers like Christy Mathewson, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, who posted a 2.03 ERA and won 35 games. Mathewson was dominant, and his control on the mound was legendary. He was the clear MVP of the season. Meanwhile, the Giants' lineup featured stars like Mike Donlin and George Davis, who could both hit for average and power, making them a tough team to beat. If only the World Series had happened. The American League wasn't about to let McGraw's refusal go unanswered. Despite being deprived of the chance to prove themselves against the best of the National League, the Boston Americans, soon to become the Boston Red Sox, finished with a strong 95-59 record and were still the American League champions. However, without a World Series, the American League missed its opportunity to prove their legitimacy on the biggest stage. It wasn't until 1905, when the Philadelphia Athletics and the New York Giants finally met, that the World Series would return. The decision not to play in 1904 left a black mark on McGraw's career, but it was a turning point for baseball. The cancellation of the World Series forced the two leagues to finally settle their rivalry. By 1905, the National and American Leagues began to work together, leading to a more formalized and stable relationship between the two, with future World Series set to be played without dispute. As for McGraw, he would later admit that his refusal to play in the 1904 series was a mistake, but it was a decision that changed the course of baseball history forever. If you love baseball history, crazy stories from the past, and hidden gems like this, make sure to subscribe to the Baseball Rabbit Hole. There's a whole universe of forgotten baseball stories just waiting to be explored.